The wind carried the scent. It slid beneath the pounding rain and the sharp tang of asphalt, threading through the night air like a ribbon of heat. Alpha Damon halted at the edge of the dark street, senses sharpening, his wolf surging close to the surface, his son. The scent was faint but undeniable, warm, young, threaded with the innocent musk of a pup not yet through his first shift. But something else clung to it, wrapped so tightly he could barely separate the strands. Human, female, his lip curled, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. For 2 days and nights he had run without rest, trailing the scent from Pack's mountain territory, through forest and back roads, across rivers swollen with spring rain. Each step had honed his fury, his air stolen from the heart of guarded land. And now the trail ended here, in a quiet human town where street lamps flickered and water streamed through cracked gutters. At the far end of the block stood a narrow house, its faded yellow paint peeling under the storm. One light glowed behind thin curtains, spilling a square of gold onto the wet porch. Damon motioned for the 2 warriors at his back to hold their ground. They obeyed instantly, their shoulders squared, eyes scanning the street. His wolf didn't want them inside for this. He took the porch steps in 2 strides. Inside, faint movement shadowed the light. Through the glass, he saw her, a slender woman, hair pulled up in a loose knot that let damp curls brush the back of her neck. She wore a pale robe belted tight at the waist. In her arms, a small boy rested his head against her shoulder, his tiny fingers curled in the fabric. She rocked him slowly, murmuring something too soft for human ears to catch. But Damon heard it, a lullaby, his son. A cold, hard knot settled in his chest. The door didn't open, he didn't knock. It splintered under his shoulder with a sharp crack. Rain blew in, darkening the floorboards. She spun toward him, clutching the boy closer. Wide eyes startled, but not afraid. Confusion swirled in her scent, along with something else. Something warm and intoxicating that slammed into him like a blow. Not possible. "Put him down," Damon growled, his voice rough with the command of an alpha. Her grip tightened. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" "That's my son," he said, stepping inside. Each step drew him closer to her scent, to the strange pull in his chest that made his wolf snarl and pace. "And you're going to hand him over before I decide not to be civil." She blinked, stunned. "Your son, he's my foster child." He closed the distance, cutting her words short. The scent was stronger now, wrapping around him, curling under his skin until every nerve was aware of her. Mate, the truth struck like lightning, burning away the last threads of his rage and replacing them with something fiercer, older. Her voice shook now, not with fear, but with something she didn't seem to understand. "You're mistaken." Damon's golden eyes locked on hers. His voice dropped, dark and certain. "No. About this," he said, "I'm never mistaken." Chapter 1. The Boy Who Wouldn't Let Go. For a long moment, no one moved. The rain whispered against the open doorway, the only sound between them. Damon stood tense, fighting to keep his wolf under control, his eyes never leaving the woman. She was human. She had to be. And yet, every instinct in him screamed otherwise. The boy stirred in her arms, his small head lifted, revealing tousled brown hair and sleepy eyes the same molten gold as Damon's. His gaze went from Damon to the warriors waiting outside, then back to the woman. "Mommy," he murmured, the words soft and certain. The sound punched through Damon's chest. His son had never called anyone that before, not even his late mother. Her arms tightened protectively. "You've scared him," she said. Voice shot now, the tremor gone. "He's my son," Damon repeated, but softer this time, as if speaking to the boy instead of her. He held out a hand. "Come here, little one. I'll take you home." The child didn't move. His small fingers curled tighter in her robe. Something flickered across Damon's face. Irritation, then confusion. Most pups, even those not raised in the pack, recognize their alpha's pull. This boy should have shifted toward him instinctively. Instead, he buried his face against her neck. The woman met Damon's gaze with quiet defiance. "He's not leaving with you in the middle of the night. If you're really his father, you'll prove it. Otherwise, you're just a stranger who broke into my home." Damon stepped closer, slow and deliberate. She didn't back away, though her heartbeat thudded faster. Her scent hit him again. Warm honey, rain, something wild buried deep. It unsettled him more than he'd admit. "I don't have to prove anything," he said, but the words lacked their usual edge. The boy's stubborn, clinging gnawed at his certainty. "Then you won't get him," she replied. One of the warriors appeared in the doorway. "Alpha, rogues are circling the area," he said quietly. "Your orders?" Damon's gaze stayed locked on her. He could take the boy by force. He could throw her over his shoulder and be gone before she took another breath. But something in her stance, the way she shielded the boy with her entire body, made his wolf hesitate. "We're not done," he said finally. His voice was low, dangerous, but not final. "I'll be back soon." He turned and left, but the scent of her clung to him all the way down the porch steps, sinking deeper into his bones than he liked. Inside, she held the boy tighter, whispering to him, "It's okay, baby. I won't let him take you." But even as she spoke, a shiver ran through her. Something in that man's eyes had felt too real to dismiss, too wild to be just human anger. And when she looked out the window, he was still there watching her from the street. Chapter 2: Instincts She Shouldn't Have. By dawn, the rain had stopped. The small town looked deceptively quiet, the streets washed clean under a pale sky. But Damon hadn't slept. He'd been moving in the shadows, circling her neighborhood, watching from rooftops and alleyways. His warriors waited for his signal, but he didn't give it. Not yet. Something about her, it gnawed at him worse than the ache of being separated from his son. At mid-morning, he finally saw her again. She was in the backyard, hanging laundry on a thin rope strung between two posts. The boy was a few feet away, sitting cross-legged on the grass, stacking brightly colored blocks. Her movements were quick but graceful, balanced like a predator without knowing it. When the wind shifted, Damon caught her scent again. Warm honey, summer air, something wild beneath the human layer. His wolf pressed hard against the surface, ears pricked, wanting closer. Then it happened. A bird dropped from a nearby branch, wings flapping frantically. The boy gasped, and before the sound had even finished, she had spun toward him. In less than a heartbeat, she crossed the yard, crouched beside him, and lifted him into her arms. No human moved like that. Not without training. Not with that kind of instinct. "You're safe," she murmured, scanning the trees with sharp, alert eyes. Damon noticed the subtle flare of her nostrils, the way she seemed to sense the air. When she relaxed, it was only because she decided there was no threat. And she was right. The bird had simply startled itself. But Damon's pulse didn't settle. He stayed hidden, studying every small movement, She never once turned her back on the boy. Every shift of her shoulders was calculated to keep herself between him and the open yard. An ordinary human foster mother wouldn't think like that. Alpha. A voice came quietly from behind him. One of his warriors crouched low. I checked records. She's clean. No arrests. No history of violence. Fostered 4 children before this one. None of them mine, Damon muttered. None of them mattered to me, until now. The warrior hesitated. There's something else. Her birth records. They're sealed. Not just sealed, wiped. Damon's eyes narrowed. Who can wipe a human's records completely? Not humans, the warrior said simply. Damon's wolf surged at the answer, already forming the truth he'd been resisting. She wasn't just a woman who'd stumbled into his world by accident. She was hiding something, maybe from herself. The boy laughed suddenly, the sound bright and innocent. She smiled at him, and for a moment, Damon almost stepped out from the shadows. Almost told her everything. Instead, he melted back into the trees. This wasn't the time. Not yet. But when the rogues came again, and they would, she wouldn't just need his protection. She'd need the truth. Chapter 3. The bloodline in her veins. The moon rose pale and thin over the rooftops, casting a silver sheen across the wet pavement. Damon watched the house from a darkened rooftop across the street, his wolf pacing restlessly inside him. Every instinct told him she was more than she seemed. The boy had been put to bed hours ago. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the soft creak of floorboards as she moved from room to room. She checked the locks twice, drew the curtains tight, and finally settled on the couch with a book. But then it happened. The air shifted, a ripple so faint most humans wouldn't notice. Damon saw her lift her head, nostrils flaring. She set the book aside and moved silently to the window, scanning the street with an intensity that made his wolf still. A stray dog padded out of the shadows, its head low, eyes glinting. Her posture changed instantly. She didn't flinch or step back. She lowered herself slightly, weight on the balls of her feet, the stance of a creature ready to defend. The dog stopped at the edge of her yard, tail stiff, and growled. Damon's wolf bristled in response, but before he could intervene, she stepped forward and growled back. The sound was low and guttural, nothing human in it. The dog froze, ears flattening, then turned and slunk away into the dark. She straightened slowly, one hand pressed to her temple, as if startled by her own reaction. Damon's breath came slow, controlled. There was no denying it now. Her instincts weren't borrowed. They were bred into her. He dropped from the rooftop, landing without a sound, and crossed the street to her porch. He didn't knock this time, just leaned in close to the doorframe, his voice low. That wasn't human. A sharp intake of breath came from the other side. What are you doing here? Waiting for you to admit what you are. I'm nothing, she said quickly, but her voice was tight, defensive. You don't growl like that unless you were born to it, Damon said, every word deliberate. You don't move like that unless your blood remembers. She was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. I've always been different, stronger, faster. I can hear things other people can't, smell things. She hesitated. My parents told me never to speak of it. Damon's chest tightened. A memory stirred. Stories told in the pack's oldest archives about a vanished bloodline. One that could walk as both human and wolf without ever shifting. A line thought extinct for centuries. If I'm right, he said quietly, you're not just different. You're the last of them. Her pulse thudded in the silence. And if you're wrong, he stepped closer. close enough that his voice slid like heat over her skin. "I'm not wrong." Somewhere deep in the house, the boy whimpered in his sleep, a sound that made them both turn toward his room. And in that moment, the night air shifted again, carrying the scent of approaching danger. Chapter 4. When the rogues came, the first howl split the night air like a blade. Low, mournful, and too close, Damon's head snapped toward the sound, his wolf instantly on alert. The second howl came from the opposite side of the street, higher, sharper, the signal of a hunt closing in. Inside the house, she was already moving. She crossed the living room in quick, purposeful strides, her bare feet silent against the wooden floor. Without thinking, she grabbed the boy from his bed and clutched him to her chest. "Get away from the windows," Damon ordered, stepping inside. The door wasn't locked. It hadn't been since he'd arrived. Her eyes flashed at him, but she obeyed, ducking behind the couch and crouching low. The boy clung to her, sensing the tension in the air. The rogues didn't bother hiding their approach. Heavy paws thudded against the ground, claws scraping asphalt. The scent of unwashed fur, blood, and something darker drifted through the cracks in the walls. Damon turned to her. "If they get in here, you run. Take him and run." Her chin lifted. "I'm not leaving you to fight alone. This isn't your fight. Anything that threatens him is my fight." The words sparked something fierce in his chest. A flash of pride, of recognition. His wolf liked her defiance. The first rogue hit the porch with a snarl, shaking the doorframe. Damon lunged forward, his body shifting mid-stride, bone and muscle stretched, fur erupted, and in a heartbeat, the Alpha stood in full wolf form, massive, golden-eyed, lethal. The door burst inward under the rogue. Roga's weight. Damon slammed into it, teeth sinking into the intruder's shoulder, driving it back into the night. Blood sprayed hot and metallic, coating the air. Another rogue darted through the open doorway. She moved before it reached her, faster than Damon expected. She set the boy behind her, grabbed the nearest object, a heavy fireplace poker, and swung. The iron connected with a sickening crack, sending the rogue stumbling sideways. Her stance was perfect. Feet planted, weight balanced, eyes locked on her target. Not a flicker of fear. The rogue lunged again, but she pivoted, letting its momentum carry it past her. She slammed the poker into its ribs, hard enough to make it yelp. Damon finished it with a savage snap of his jaws. The air went still. Only the ragged sound of their breathing filled the space. Blood smeared the floorboards, the scent of it thick and lingering. Slowly, Damon shifted back, towering over her in human form now. Chest bare, muscles slick with sweat and rain. "You've done this before," he said, voice low. She shook her head, still catching her breath. "No, I just knew what to do." His gaze held hers, and for a moment neither spoke. His wolf was still pacing, restless, drawn to her in ways he could no longer deny. Outside, another howl rose in the distance, farther away this time. The danger had passed for now, but Damon knew this wasn't over, and judging by the look in her eyes, neither did she. Chapter 5. Into the Wolf's Den. The road wound upward into the mountains, dark pines crowding both sides. The air was sharp and cold, heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine sap. She sat in the passenger seat of Damon's black SUV, the boy asleep in her arms, his small head resting against her chest. Damon drove without speaking. His hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale, jaw tight. His wolf was still riding high from the fight, restless and alert. Every time the headlights caught her face, something inside him clenched. That stubborn chin, those watchful eyes, the faint smudge of blood on her cheek that wasn't her own. You didn't have to come, she said finally, breaking the silence. I can protect him. Damon's gaze flicked to her, then back to the road. Against one rogue, maybe against a pack of them? No. She tightened her hold on the boy. I've kept him safe this long, and now they know where you are, Damon said. His voice quiet but edged. They'll keep coming. Not for him, for you. Her brow furrowed. For me? He hesitated, then said, You're more important than you realize. She didn't press, but he could feel her curiosity brimming. She didn't trust him yet, not enough to take his word for anything. They drove in silence for another hour, the road climbing higher until the first faint lights of his pack settlement came into view. Wooden lodges sat tucked among the trees. Smoke curling from chimneys. A river ran silver in the moonlight, its surface broken by the occasional leap of a fish. As they rolled through the gates, warriors emerged from the shadows, their eyes tracking the vehicle. Some bowed their heads to Damon, others stared openly at her. This is where you live? She asked, her voice hushed. My home, he said. Your safe place, for now. She glanced at him. Safe place or prison? He didn't answer. Damon parked in front of the largest lodge, a sprawling structure of dark wood and stone. He stepped out and came around to her side, opening the door. She hesitated, her gaze sweeping over the curious stares of the gathered wolves. Stay close to me, he said quietly, offering his hand. She didn't take it, but she followed him, the boy still asleep against her shoulder. The scent of wolves was everywhere here, rich, musky, alive. Her instincts bristled, not entirely in fear. Inside, the lodge was warm and fire-lit, the air thick with wood smoke, and the faint tang of meat roasting somewhere deeper in the building. Damon led her to a private room on the second floor. You'll stay here, he said. No one comes in without my permission. She turned to face him. And you? I'll be right next door. His eyes lingered on hers, holding just a second too long. If you need anything, you call for me. Her pulse skipped. She nodded once, and he stepped out, closing the door between them. But even separated by a wall, he could still feel him like the echo of a storm waiting to break. Out. Chapter 6. Whispers of the Past. The night was quiet in the Alpha's lodge, but Damon's mind refused to rest. He stood at the window of his office, watching the dark forest sway in the wind. His wolf was pacing just beneath the surface, unsettled, not from the rogues, but from her. She was only one room away. He could hear her breathing if he focused, slow and steady as she slept. Every inhale carried that same scent. Warm honey, wild flowers, and the faintest trace of something he'd only smelled once before in the oldest archives of his memory. A knock came at the door. Marcus, his beta, stepped inside without waiting for permission. You wanted the records, Marcus said, holding out a thick leather folder. Damon took it, flipping it open. Inside were scraps, not the usual clean reports, torn pages, faded photographs, partial transcripts. Someone had tried to erase her history completely. She was registered as a foster child from the age of 4. Marcus said before that, nothing. Birth certificate gone. Medical records gone. The only clue is here. He slid a brittle sheet of paper free, a faded family crest inked in black and gold. Damon stared at it, the hairs on his arms lifting. The Night Fang crest, he murmured. Marcus nodded. Extinct. Or so we thought. The Night Fangs weren't just wolves. They were the kind of wolves legends warned about. ... A bloodline with the ability to channel raw lunar power without shifting, able to heal faster, strike harder, sense danger before it came. They'd been hunted into oblivion centuries ago by rival packs who feared their strength. And now one of them was sleeping in his house. "Do you want me to tell her?" Marcus asked. Damon's jaw tightened. "Not yet. If she doesn't know it's safer that way, the rogues will come for her soon enough without us adding fuel." Marcus gave a short nod and left, leaving Damon alone again. He stayed at the window for a long time, watching the moon climb higher until a soft creak broke the stillness. She stood in the doorway, her hair loose around her shoulders, eyes heavy with sleep. She was wearing one of the log's long shirts, the hem brushing her knees. "I heard voices," she said quietly. "Just Marcus," Damon replied. "Go back to bed." Instead, she stepped into the room. The firelight painted her skin in warm gold, and his wolf stirred. "Why do I feel different here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like I belong." "Because you do," Damon thought, but the words stayed locked in his throat. "You're tired," he said instead. "The mountains can play tricks on you." Her gaze lingered on him, searching for something. Then she nodded and turned to leave. But before she crossed the threshold, she glanced over her shoulder. "You're hiding something from me." His pulse kicked, but he didn't answer. When she was gone, the fire popped in the hearth, a sharp, sudden crack that echoed in the silence. Chapter 7: The Moon's Claim. The pack gathered in the training yard at dawn, the cold mountain air curling in pale mist from every breath. Warriors sparred in pairs, the thud of bodies hitting the dirt echoing between the pines. She stood off to the side, the boy at her hip, taking in the spectacle with wide, guarded eyes. Damon had told her it was just a morning drill. She hadn't believed him then, and she didn't believe him now. The way the warriors' glances kept darting her way told her this was more than routine. When one of the younger fighters stumbled to the ground, clutching his side, Damon called for a break. He crossed to her, golden eyes sharp against the pale light. "Stay close," he murmured. She opened her mouth to ask why, but the answer came on the wind. The stench hit first. Wet fur, rot, and the bitter tang of something not entirely alive. Rogues again, but different this time. Faster, bolder, their howls ringing through the trees before the first shadow moved at the forest's edge. The pack shifted instantly, clothes tearing, bones snapping, fur erupting. A wave of snarling wolves surged toward the tree line. She backed toward the lodge with the boy, but the ground in front of her exploded as a rogue broke through the defense line. It was huge. Its coat mottled black and gray, its eyes the unnatural yellow of something poisoned by dark magic. It lunged for her. She had no weapon, nowhere to run. Instinct took over. Her feet planted, her body turned, her arm shot out, and then the world exploded in silver light. It wasn't fire. It wasn't lightning. It was something older, purer, a burst of lunar radiance that poured from her palm and struck the rogue mid-leap. The creature screamed, a raw, high sound, and crumpled to the dirt in a smoking heap. The yard went still. Every wolf had frozen mid-fight, their eyes still gleaming in their shifted forms locked on her. Even Damon, in his massive wolf body, stood motionless, his ears forward, his gaze fixed on the fading glow that still shimmered around her fingers. The boy clung to her leg, trembling, but she hardly felt his weight. Her heart was pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. I didn't mean to," she started, her voice shaking. Damon shifted back in a single fluid motion, his bare skin steaming in the cold air. He closed the distance between them in long strides, stopping so close she could feel his breath. "You've been hiding this," he said, low but carrying, every warrior within earshot still watching. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know." He studied her for a long moment, golden eyes unreadable. Then he turned to the watching pack. "She is under my protection," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "Any who question it, answer to me." No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound was the slow, steady crackle of her fading power in the cold air. And in her chest, something new began to stir. A dangerous, exhilarating awareness that the life she'd known was over. Chapter 8. Bloodlines and Bonds. The lodge's great hall was empty, the fire a low glow in the hearth. She sat at the long wooden table, fingers curled around a mug she hadn't touched. Her hands still tingled from what happened in the yard, the phantom heat of the silver light pulsing faintly beneath her skin. Damon stood at the far end of the table, his broad frame half in shadow. He'd been quiet since they returned from the training yard, but the tension in the air was thicker than smoke. "You knew," she said finally, her voice flat. "You knew I was whatever I am." His eyes lifted to hers, gold flashing in the dim light. "Not at first, I suspected. Now I know." She waited, heart thudding. "You are Nightfang," he said. The name felt like it belonged in an ancient book, not in her own body. A bloodline fought dead for over 300 years, hunted, erased. Their power feared more than the Alpha Crown itself. She shook her head. "I've never even heard of them." "You wouldn't have," he said, moving closer. "Your parents, your real parents, hid you, changed your name, buried your history to protect you. But you can't hide power like yours forever." Her throat tightened. "So all this time, my life was just a cover," Damon finished for her. "The rogues know what you are. They'll keep coming until they have you or you're dead." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "And what do you want, Damon? To use me like they do?" The corner of his mouth curved, not in amusement, but in something darker. "No, to protect you, to keep you breathing, even if it kills me." She looked away, but not before she saw the truth in his eyes. It wasn't just duty, it was something far more dangerous. He came around the table, his presence crowding the air. "There's more," he said softly. "Nightfangs are bound to the moon in a way no other wolves are. When they find their fated mate, the bond is instant, unbreakable." Her pulse spiked. "And you think I'm—" "I don't think," he cut in, his voice low, certain. "I know." The silence that followed was heavy, charged. She could feel the pull between them. That strange magnetic heat that had been there from the moment they met. It scared her. It thrilled her. "I can't be what you want," she whispered. His gaze swept her face, lingering on her lips. "You already are." For a moment, the world outside the hall didn't exist. No rogues, no danger, no history written in blood. Only the space between them, shrinking with each breath. Then The sharp clang of the alarm bell shattered the moment. Damon's head snapped toward the sound, his wolf instantly on alert. "They've breached the outer watch," he said, already moving. "Stay here." But she was on her feet before he reached the door. "Not without you." He looked back once, his eyes a storm of gold. "Then stay close, Nightfang." Chapter 9. The Hunt for the Air. The cold night air slapped her face as they burst from the lodge. The moon hung full and heavy above the mountains, silvering the world in its glow. The packyard was chaos. Wolves in midshift, snarls and howls cutting through the clamor of steel against claw. Damon's voice rose above it all, commanding. "Hold the west flank." His alpha tone cracked through the noise like a whip, the kind that made even the fiercest warriors obey without hesitation. She stayed close as they wove through the melee, the boy clutching her hands so tightly his small fingers dug into her skin. Damon moved like liquid strength, every strike decisive, every dodge perfectly timed. She had never seen such controlled violence. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Then a flash of movement caught her eye. A rogue, lean and fast, slipped through the chaos, its eyes fixed not on the warriors, but on the boy. Her heart lurched. Damon. He was already turning, sensing the danger. The rogue lunged. She shoved the boy behind her and reached for that strange heat deep in her chest. It answered instantly, a rush of power flooding her veins. Silver light exploded from her palms, slamming into the rogue mid-leap. It yelped, spinning in the air before hitting the ground hard. But before she could strike, again, another shadow streaked past Damon and snatched the boy from behind. "No!" Her scream was raw. Damon roared, his wolf bursting free in a blur of fur and fangs. He slammed into the attacker, sending them both crashing into the dirt. The boy tumbled free, scrambling toward her on shaky legs. She caught him, pulling him close, but her eyes stayed locked on Damon. The rogue he fought wasn't like the others. Its fur was black as pitch, its eyes molten gold. Wrong, corrupted. It met her gaze for one chilling second and snarled words she should not have been able to understand. "We don't want you, Nightfang. We want the air." A cold spike of fear shot through her. The air. They meant him, the boy. Damon didn't hesitate. With a final brutal twist, he broke the rogue's neck and let the body drop. Blood steamed in the cold air. His golden eyes found hers, fierce and wild. "You heard him," she said, breathless. He shifted back, chest heaving. "Yes, and now I know how deep this goes." His gaze flicked to the boy. "They'll keep coming until one of us stops breathing." Her stomach turned. "Why him? Why my boy?" Damon stepped closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. "Because he's not just your boy. He's my son, my heir." The words hit harder than any rogue strike. She stared at him, unable to find her voice, the boy's small arms tightening around her neck, as if he understood everything. And above them, the moon kept shining, bright, cold, and unblinking. Chapter 10. The Alpha's Son. They didn't return to the lodge immediately. Damon led them through a narrow trail along the ridge, away from the scent of blood and death that clung to the yard. The boy was quiet in her arms, his face pressed to her neck, as if trying to disappear into her. When they finally stopped, it was in a small clearing, lit by the pale wash of moonlight. Damon's wolf senses swept the perimeter before he turned back to her. "You're going to explain," she said, her voice sharp enough to hide the trembling underneath. He met her gaze without flinching. "His name is Elias. He's my son, my only blood." Her breath caught. "That's impossible. I've had him since rogues ambushed the pack 2 winters ago." Damon cut in. "He was barely walking. I thought he was dead." "My enemies wanted me to believe it." His jaw tightened, the muscle ticking there. "Someone placed him with you, to hide him or to use him." The weight of his words sank deep. She remembered every scraped knee she'd bandaged, every fever she'd soothed, every night she'd held him while he whimpered from nightmares. She had loved him as her own, without ever knowing whose blood ran through him. "Why would they use me?" she asked quietly. Damon stepped closer, the air between them thick with the same electric pull that had been there since their first meeting. "Because you're not just a foster mother, you're Nightfang." Strong enough to protect him until they were ready to take him. Her stomach twisted. "So what now? You think I should just hand him over to you?" His eyes flared gold, but his voice stayed calm. "No, I'm asking you to stand with me. If you leave on your own, they'll find you. If you stay, you'll be under my protection and my claim." Her pulse stumbled. "Your claim?" His gaze dipped briefly to her mouth, then back to her eyes. "The mate bond isn't something either of us chose, but it's here. You felt it the moment we met. Deny it all you want. It won't change what you are to me." The boy stirred, murmuring her name in his sleep, and she clutched him tighter. She wanted to refuse Damon, to say she didn't need him, but she wasn't foolish. She'd seen the way the rogues came tonight. They weren't hunting randomly. They had a purpose, and they wouldn't stop. "What happens if I say yes?" she asked, her voice low. His answer was immediate. "We fight together. We protect him together. And when the plague that drives these rogues comes for the rest of us, we stand between it and everyone we love." The moonlight caught on his bare shoulders, painting him in silver fire, his presence filling the clearing. She knew the moment she opened her mouth, everything would change. She drew in a breath, her decision balancing on the edge of that silence. Chapter 11. The Mate's Oath. She didn't remember making the choice aloud, only the way Damon's expression shifted the instant she stepped closer. Something in his shoulders eased, but the intensity in his eyes deepened, like a man seeing the horizon after years at sea. "I'll stay," she said, her voice steady despite the fear threading through her. "But this is for Elias, not for you." He gave a slow nod. "For him then. But understand this, my son is my life. And now, so are you." Before she could reply, the wind shifted. The night sounds vanished. Even the owls went silent. Damon's head snapped toward the treine, nostrils flaring. "They followed us." Her pulse spiked. "Here." He shoved his shirt into her hands. "Wrap him in my scent," he ordered, already shifting mid-stride. Bones cracked, fur erupted, and in a breath, he was the massive golden wolf again, teeth bared. The first rogue burst from the shadows, not mangy and desperate like before, but sleek, its black fur rippling with sickly silver veins. Its eyes glowed with the same molten gold she'd seen earlier, and its focus was fixed on Elias. She set the boy down behind her and stepped forward. Fear coiled tight in her gut, but the heat in her chest rose to meet it. The rogue lunged. Silver light erupted from her hands, but this time it didn't blast outward in a wild burst. It flowed, smooth and deliberate, coiling into a whip of lunar fire. She lashed it across the rogue's side, the air sizzling where it struck. The creature howled, staggering, Damon hit it a heartbeat later, jaws locking around its throat. Blood sprayed hot and metallic in the cold air. But another rogue crashed through the brush, and another behind it. 3, 4, then 5. Her magic surged higher, stronger than before. Every pulse matched the rhythm of the moon overhead, every flare pulling on some deep, ancient part of her. She moved in tandem with Damon, light and claw, magic and muscle, cutting down anything that got close to Elias. Finally, the last rogue fell, the clearing littered with bodies, steaming in the moonlight. Damon shifted back, chest heaving, his skin streaked with dirt and blood. "You fight like one of us," he said, voice rough. "No, you fight like my mate." Her breath trembled in the cold night air. "I didn't do it for you. I know." His gaze dropped to Elias, who stood wide-eyed but unheard. "You did it for him. That's why you'll never be alone again." Something in her chest cracked open at those words. A warmth spreading that had nothing to do with her magic. The boy slipped his small hand into hers, then reached for Damon's. For the first time, their fingers linked together, the three of them forming a fragile but unbreakable chain. Somewhere deep in the forest, the plague still stirred. More battles would come, but for now, under the silver watch of the moon, they stood together, alpha, mate, and heir, and no force in this world or the next would take that from them. Epilogue. Spring came early that year. The mountains were still tipped with snow, but the packlands had begun to green, the air scented with pine sap and fresh earth. She stood at the edge of the training yard, watching Elias chase two pups his age, their laughter ringing in the crisp morning air. It had been 3 weeks since the night in the clearing. 3 weeks since she'd stood with Damon against the rogues and claimed her place, not only as Elias's protector, but as something far more dangerous. Her place as the Alpha's mate. The title still felt strange in her mouth. But the bond between them no longer scared her the way it once had. There was a steadiness to it now, a heat that burned low but constant, like embers that would never die out. A warm hand brushed hers, and she glanced sideways. Damon stood beside her, his golden eyes softer than most ever saw them. "He's settling in," he murmured, nodding toward Elias. She smiled. "He's happy. That's all I wanted. That's all I want too." He shifted closer, his shoulder brushing hers. A subtle claim that needed no words. "You've given him more than safety. You've given him family." The word tugged at something deep inside her. She had never had a family worth keeping. Not until Elias and now Damon. Her smile faded as her thoughts turned darker. "The rogues will come again." "Yes," Damon said without hesitation. "And when they do, we'll be ready." He glanced at her then, his mouth curving faintly. "Especially with a night thing by my side." She snorted softly, but the pride in his voice warmed her. Since the battle, she had trained daily with the warriors, learning to harness her lunar magic. It no longer frightened her. The silver fire felt like an extension of her heartbeat, and with Damon's guidance, she could call it at will. A distant howl rose from the treine, not a warning, but a call, deep and resonant. Damon tilted his head slightly, listening. "The scouts are back. No rogue scent for miles." She exhaled. Tension she hadn't realized she was carrying, loosening in her shoulders. For now, they were safe. Elias spotted them and came running, cheeks flushed, hair wild. "Papa! Mama!" he called, his little voice ringing clear. She froze. Damon didn't. He crouched, catching the boy in his arms, laughing low in his chest. "Say that again," he teased. Elias grinned, oblivious to the lump in her throat. "Papa! Mama!" When Damon straightened, he didn't let go of the boy or of her gaze. It settled then. The sun dipped behind the ridge, the first stars pricking the sky. The moon was just rising, a pale curve above the tree line. As its light touched her skin, her magic stirred, silver threads dancing briefly along her arms. Damon's eyes flared in answer, as if the moon itself approved. Whatever came, plague, rogues, the ghosts of the past, they would face it together. And under the moon's blessing, she knew one truth with unshakable certainty. She was no longer a woman who stood alone. She was the Alpha's mate. She was a mother. She was Nightfang. And she was home. Thanks for listening till the end. You are welcome to join the Selene Pack. Where are you listening from? If you enjoyed listening to this story, please hit the like button, share it with someone who'd love this, and subscribe to Nightbond Narratives, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Tell me in the comments below which part of the world you are watching from.